For most Americans, Wednesday, April 15th will be tax day. But in our fourth story tonight, it's going to be teabagging day for the right wing, and they are going nuts for it. Thousands of them whipped out the festivities early this past weekend, and while the parties are officially toothless, the teabaggers are full-throated about their goals. They want to give President Obama strong tongue-lashing and lick government spending they did not oppose when they were under Presidents Bush and Reagan. They oppose Mr. Obama's tax rates, which will be lower for most of them. And they oppose the tax increases Mr. Obama is imposing on the rich, whose taxes will skyrocket to a rate about 10% less than it was under Reagan. That's teabagging in a nutshell, taking its inspiration from the Boston Tea Party when colonists tossed British tea into the sea because the tax on it had not been voted on by their own duly elected representatives. That's exactly the opposite, of course, of today's taxes, known in some quarters as taxation with representation. But as New York Times columnist Paul Krugman points out today, this time the teabagging is not a spontaneous uprising. The people who came up with it are a familiar circle of Republicans, including former House Speaker Newt Gingrich and former House Majority Leader Dick Armey, both of whom have firm support from right-wing financiers and lobbyists, as well as Washington prostitute patron Senator David Vitter, who has issued statements in support of teabagging but is publicly tight-lipped. Then there is the media, specifically the Fox News channel, including Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity. Both are looking forward to an up-close and personal taste of teabagging themselves at events this Wednesday. But most amusing of all is Neil Cavuto, a member of the network's executive committee. Neil's online bio says he joined the network in July of 1996, 3 months before the Fox News channel went on the air. Cavuto, defending his network's promotion of teabagging, said, quote, "We are going to be right in the middle of these teabaggers because at Fox, we do not pick and choose these rallies and protests. We were there for the Million Man March." Can we roll that footage, the Fox News coverage of the Million Man March back in October of '95? Of course, the Million Man March occurred, as newshounds.org points out, almost a year before Fox News was on the air. We can only speculate why widespread teabagging made Cavuto think of the Million Man March, unless he got them confused with Dick Armey. And in Cavuto's defense, if you are planning simultaneous teabagging all around the country, you're going to need a Dick Armey. Still with us, to our amazement, is MSNBC political analyst Lawrence O'Donnell, also a contributor at HuffingtonPost.com. And Lawrence, thanks for joining us tonight.
Good to be with you, David.
Lawrence, no taxation without representation. As I recall, the issue our founding fathers died for was the right to vote for our own representatives, who would then make the decisions about our tax policy. Any chance we can establish some sort of system like that by Wednesday?
Well, there you go. Since I'm from Boston, I'm very proud of the Boston Tea Party. But it was, as you point out, it was about where the money was going. The money wasn't going to the Massachusetts colony, and that was the problem. This is an orchestrated attempt by Dick Armey, Newt Gingrich, people who are trying to repair the Republican Party. They know that the Republican Party is in shambles. They know that Eric Cantor is a disaster as a new leadership member. They know that Boehner is doing a terrible job in the leadership. They've been in the leadership in the House of Representatives. They don't have a great deal of faith in this strategy, and that's why it's been delegated somewhat at arm's length. That's why they're pretending that this is a grassroots movement. Fox News is in the same position. What they're trying to do is create gigantic television events for their shows on that day. They have to pretend that they are covering a news event rather than trying to create one, which they've very clearly done when you look at the history of in the last month of the Fox News discussion of this and how they've built it up. And so this is an attempt to try to see if the taxation spot is the place where you can get at Barack Obama, because nothing else has worked. Now, the problem is, on this April 15th, the taxation rates that they will all be protesting are the George W. Bush Republican Congress taxation rates. That's how we got these tax rates. Sean Hannity, in the approach to this April 15th protest, has talked about the skyrocketing tax rates. The tax rates have not increased in this country in 16 years, and they did under Bill Clinton in 1993. He increased one tax rate, the top tax rate, and President Bush then immediately cut it as his first order of business. So all of the protest of the federal tax rates on April 15th, all of it will be targeted at George W. Bush. I'm not sure the protesters understand that.
And taxes are not the only or perhaps even primary issue, right?
No, you see, for example, in some of your footage there was someone was holding up a sign about socialism, and others are at these rallies talking about whether Barack Obama really is a United States citizen or whether he really is a Muslim, these old weird questions that we've seen over the past year or so. And the socialism sign is fascinating for me. The guy holding it in the footage looked to be maybe in his 40s or so. He's not on Medicare yet, but he will be. His parents are on Medicare now. They are receiving Social Security now. These are well-working socialist programs within the American government. There is absolutely no other description of them. And they are socialist programs that are supported by Republicans and Democrats alike. There's not one member of the Republican leadership who has ever said, let's repeal Medicare. Not one of them. And not one of them who refuses to use Medicare within their own family or use it for themselves. And so these programs that are admittedly socialistic, because any economist will tell you that the world is full of mixed economies, economies that use some capitalism and some socialism. They try to temper them for the best mix. I would submit that the United States currently has one of the very best mixes of socialism and capitalism. But the people who stand out there protesting socialism at these kinds of rallies wouldn't dream of tearing up their Medicare cards and refusing to ever use Medicare again.
Is this a Faustian sort of thing for GOP leaders? I mean, meaning that maybe they know that all of this has the effect of marginalizing the Republican Party, but in return they can point to the publicity and say to their money men, hey, look, at least we're doing something.
That's what this is. This is truly desperate. It is so desperate that people don't really want to formally attach their names to it. They don't really want to be seen as the leaders of it. It's a one-day protest aimed at nothing Barack Obama has actually done. It is aimed at the tax code that has been imposed on this country by a Republican Congress and a Republican president who was previously the champion of exactly these protesters. And so it is a completely wrong-headed approach to what's going on. They've picked April 15th as Rage Day for taxpayers, and there's not a single taxpayer out there who is paying a new Barack Obama tax rate. That doesn't exist.
Lawrence O'Donnell of the Huffington Post. Lawrence, thanks as always. We appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
The Minnesota Senate battle between Norm Coleman and Al Franken now has an official winner, 161 days after the November 4th election. It's Al Franken. The winner by 312 votes is confirmed by Minnesota's court's three-judge panel. In fact, the election challenge brought by Mr. Coleman actually increased the lead for Mr. Franken. Coleman is expected to appeal the state Supreme Court ruling that came out tonight, and he has 10 days to do so.